Let's see. Let's see. Good afternoon, everyone. Charles, are you there? Are you okay,
Yes,
technical wise?
I am here. We're all good. Go ahead. Wrap. Can you hear me?
Oh, hi, Poki. Nice to see you.
You too. How are you?
Okay, everyone, it's 2 o'clock, and I'm happy to welcome you to this meeting of the Kupuna Caucus. First of all, let me assure you that there's nothing wrong with your computer or Zoom. This is Representative Takayama, and co-chairs Moriwaki and Chun are unavailable because they are at different committee hearings that are going on at this moment. So I'm the quarterback that the coach sends in as a last resort after everyone else has been maimed or otherwise unavailable. So please bear with me. I'm happy to step in and chair this afternoon's meeting. First of all, welcome everyone to 2024, our first gathering of the new year. And as I'm sure all of you know, in a few weeks we'll be welcoming the Year of the Dragon, which is the most auspicious year out of the entire Chinese zodiac. So we're in for an exciting year, and I'm glad to be a part of it along with you and the other members of the Kupuna Caucus. Now, to kick things off, I know you all have the agenda that has our first item as the Aloha Transport Alliance with Jeff Albritton, but we received a last minute request from the Honolulu City Prosecutor, Steve to address the Kupuna Caucus for a few minutes. So if it's okay with all of you, and thank you, Jeff, for accommodating the request, I'd now like to turn it over to Prosecutor Stephen. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and welcome to everybody, and thank you for giving us a couple of minutes. At the beginning, I just wanted to bring up a couple of things that we will be, as part of our package at the legislature, just to put on your radar screen. A couple of years ago, the legislature, we were really happy when they passed the statute that an assault on a person 60 years or over became a felony. And there's some horrible examples of this. That woman walking in front of Wong's drapery, and this guy comes and hits her with a forearm and knocks her into the street. That would have been an assault third, a misdemeanor heard in district court. That became a felony. And there are a whole bunch like that. The one area we've realized, though, with that is the way the statute's written, it talks about known or have reason to believe they're 60 or over. So if grandson is beating up grandpa, he'll know grandpa's over 60. But if it's a stranger, it often comes down to what does the person look like? Are they a youthful looking 60 or over? And it creates issues for our office in charging the case. But also, that's what's argued to the jury. The defense is saying, oh, there's no reason to think this guy is over 60. And so that becomes a real challenge. So we're going to be asking the legislators to consider making it a strict liability, a per se thing. If the person's that old, it's up to the defendant, to take a chance. They're picking on somebody older because they think they're more vulnerable. They're not going to fight back as much. And we think, if anything, that should be on the defendant. And they're taking a chance if they're hitting clearly a person who's older. But whether it's 59, 60, 61, whatever, that shouldn't be the determinant. So anyway, I'm sure we'll have a good discussion with the legislators. I'm sure the public defenders will oppose this. And one thing I want to say is, nobody goes to prison for this. Nobody that I've ever seen goes to Halava prison for this. They hardly get any jail time. You may have seen a case where a guy in a Tacoma stopped it, and then he went over to another car, and the older guy's getting out of the car, and he starts punching him multiple times. That was on a home surveillance thing. That guy he had 1 day credit for time served. So, I mean, this is not going to fill up the jails. It's not going to fill up the prisons. It's just holding people responsible for their actions. So, anyway, I'm sure we'll have a good discussion at the legislature with this, with the different parties. I just wanted to bring it to your attention that we're really happy the law was passed, making it a felony, but now we're trying to make it so more people are protected, and the burden, we're not having this argument with the jurors a bunch of times on whether the guy really looks, 59, 60, 61. The other thing I wanted to bring up was the whole question of legalization of commercial marijuana. And I don't even like the term recreational, because for some adults, it is recreational. But for teenagers going to the emergency room because they think they're going crazy, that's not recreational. And we're getting, states, this isn't reefer madness. This isn't law enforcement being knee-jerk against things. But places like Colorado have 10 years of experience with this. They have found twice as many fatal car collisions ever since they've legalized it. Importantly, there's no test for police officers to give an impaired driver who isn't drinking. So if somebody's weaving all over the road, police officer stops him, gives him a field sobriety test, fails it, arrests him for DUI. They go down to the station, the person blows zeros. They have to let him go because there is no test that we can do right away. You can't give somebody a blood test for a DUI and test for it. Drugged driving is essentially what it is. And in Colorado, there are more marijuana stores than there are Starbucks and McDonald's combined. They said it is going to change the character of your neighborhood. And I do realize for some people, I really think they're thinking back to their high school years. They smoked a joint. What's the big deal? Well, back then it was 3% THC, the active ingredient. Now, I was recently in Oregon checking out the marijuana stores there, and it's 20, 30, 40% THC with concentrates over 90. And that's why I think almost any group you talk to in Hawaii is against this. The doctors are against it because kids' brains are developing. And when you have what is now a powerful drug, that's going to retard their progress in school. That's why Keith Hayashi from DOE is against this. That's why any of the doctor organizations, they're against it because of the problems. There's almost nobody in favor of it. I know there's some idea that it's going to bring in some more tax money, but our kids are going to have even more problems in school, more emergency room visits and the like. But the last thing I'd like to say about it is, as we've been looking into this for the last 6 months, the most surprising part of it was in talking to the visitor industry. And they're really worried that Japanese tourists will stop coming to Hawaii because in Japan, whether we agree with it or not, they lump marijuana together with methamphetamine and cocaine. And they just see it as a really serious drug. It's really bad social stuff. And so the Japanese, like Ted Kubo, who's head of Japan Travel Bureau, you see those buses around, they bring in 500,000 Japanese tourists a year pre-COVID. He said he's afraid they'll stop coming. Same with the leaders of Japan Airlines and otherwise. And while I think, if Waikiki becomes, you can smell weed occasionally, but if it becomes blanketed in weed, the smell of marijuana, I think that could be a real turnoff, as well as from families from everywhere. So anyway, there's everybody in law enforcement virtually is against this. The Attorney General's office said they're not going to oppose it. That's the first time that ever happened. But I think no matter how good a system you try to set up to distribute it, whether you can get rid of corruption, everything else, the fact of the matter is you're going to have increased use, increased black market, because a lot more people are using it. And it's just going to change the character of Hawaii. And I just don't think it's worth it. So anyway, thank you very much.
Steve.
Those are just a couple
Thank
of
you, Steve, would you be
Yeah.
available for questions?
By all means.
Okay, before we do that, just to fill in the rest of the Kupuna Caucus on the first bill that Steve mentioned, which is crimes against elders. Just for your background, in case you forgot, the importance of that measure is that it allows for enhanced sentences for those offenders who are convicted of hurting someone over the age of 60. So if the person's eligible for a Class C felony, it would be elevated to a Class B felony, a more serious punishment. And the other thing to add to what Stephen said is the original bill, when we introduced it years ago, actually contained what Stephen is proposing, which is that the prosecutor doesn't have to prove that the offender knew the victim was over the age of 60. So anyway, um, I will open up to questions. If any of you do have questions, please signify by raising your hand with the pointer. And while I'm waiting for that, Steve, just to let you know that
Yeah.
about 2 months ago, a good friend of mine, a woman, was walking her dog on Wilder Avenue and was pushed down by someone, knocked to the sidewalk. And fortunately, she wasn't hurt seriously, but took the case to the prosecutor. They knew who the offender was. Um, the prosecutor interviewed her and said she's 62. And one of your prosecutors said, "There's no way we're going to be able to get a conviction for crimes against the elderly because you don't look 62." Which in some references would be good, but in this case, it was not for her. So unfortunately, they did not pursue it as a more serious crime against the
Yeah.
elderly.
Yeah. No, and that's going to be Brooks Bear works for us now, and he's 60, and he's a pretty youthful looking 60. But it's so subjective whether you're charging it or afterwards. And you're absolutely right. When you guys first came up with it, it was per se, and through some sort of discussion about conference, how it came out, it ended up with that language in there. And we've just seen the effect of it, that a number of cases aren't being charged like your friend, and other cases we're losing it with the jury and coming back with a lesser of assault third because they can't agree that the person, looked like they were 60 or over. So it's a constant thing. And yet, even if somebody's 60, their bone structure is not going to be quite as good. Even if they are youthful looking, they are older. And that is the reason many of these folks are targeting folks, is because they think they're older. They won't put up as much of a fight. Sometimes they're wrong on that, but it is just to protect our kupuna. So that's why we're bringing it up. We're hoping, to be successful with it, because we think it'll be a lot easier to essentially win these cases, and a number may end up pleading. It may actually reduce the number of trials if they know they can't fight that aspect of it.
Thank you, Stephen. Just to let you know, oh, I'm sorry, Rick Tabor, you
Yeah,
have
I'm
your
just,
hand up.
I threw
Please
my
proceed.
hand up. I know, Stephen, you and I have talked about the marijuana thing before. You presented at the Kupuna Council on this as well. And
Yeah.
I'm looking again, National Institute of Health, University of Washington. I lived in Washington for a number of years. And in fact, the issues since marijuana have been legalized have gone down. The youth and teenagers went down. The youth and college students went down. Pretty positive stuff. I personally worked with medical marijuana and post-traumatic stress with veterans. There's some really good research to the effects of that. Being mental health, I do know that with marijuana, there's an underlying depression that can kind of happen. There's self-esteem issues certainly that can happen. I understand the potency piece. My thought was, though, when we passed it in the state of Washington, was if we could crack down on the illegal marijuana, the stuff that gets laced, the stuff that is actually killing people, the stuff that's got fentanyl, if we actually increase the enforcement of cracking down on illegal while using legal, that we could just switch the whole thing around and make it much more, if you will, effective. But that's my take, and that's what our take was as a mental health agency, Seattle Mental Health. 30 years I actually worked there. We spoke out pretty strongly because we know the mental health effects, both pro and con, and if used properly, actually with a doctor's prescription, we've done some really wonderful stuff with post-traumatic stress. But I just, real quick, while you were talking, I was just Googling, even King County here, it's talking about, if anything, the crime around marijuana use actually has gone down. since we've legalized it. So I know you have stats saying something different. You quote Colorado quite a bit. I know
Yeah.
Washington inside and out because I lived there 31 years. And I will tell you what I did see was an entitlement that happened, whereas all of a sudden we had some chemically dependent folks smoking marijuana, smoking pot in our waiting rooms at our mental health agency that I had to crack down on. There was a looseness, and there was also issues with folks getting high and driving in the beginning because they had to change the law so they could actually charge them with being intoxicated and driving. But I saw that immediately, and they cracked down on that pretty fast. So I'm just saying, I'm not saying I'm pro or con. I'm all ears. I'm looking at what's happened. I know what happened in Washington because I was there. I don't know what happened in Colorado, but that's my take on it. Thank you.
Well, I'm glad that
Thank you,
there seem
Mahalo.
to be some positive things from Washington, because nationally, the mental health problems are worse, the car crashes are worse, and you're going to increase the black market. So right now, HPD doesn't have to spend a lot of time enforcing marijuana laws that way, but if it's legalized, they will end up spending a lot more time doing that. So anyway, I'm just telling you, Scott Miskovich, all the doctors, Ray Vera from the hospitals, they are all totally against it. There is almost nobody in favor of it. They think it's going to be an economic panacea. That has never worked out. And the issue about the Japanese tourists is just one that really surprised us. But if that's the case, that it's going to reduce that number at this time with our economic crisis, especially with Maui, the last thing we want to do is do anything to scare our Japanese tourists away.
Thank you. Anyone else have their hand up? I thought I saw. No, I guess not. Okay, if there are no other questions, thank you very much, Steve. Look forward to discussion on your bill. Be assured that the opponents of what you're proposing will be um, very active at the legislature and
I'm
committees
sure.
when we do have the hearings, which is why we had to change the original bill. So
Okay,
thank
well,
you very
thank you
much.
for some
Mahalo.
time at the beginning here. I appreciate it.
Of course. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Thank you. So let's proceed to what was originally the first item on our agenda, which was to hear from Jeff Albritton and the Aloha Transport Assistance Program. Jeff, the floor is yours. Thank you again for accommodating Prosecutor Elm.
Not a problem at all. Thanks for having me, everyone. To the Kupuna Caucus, I appreciate your time to introduce myself and Aloha Transport Assistance. It's run by myself, Jeff Albritton, and my wife, Beth Albritton. She couldn't be here. She's actually flying at the moment. And I'd like to just go over a little bit about our background, and then I'll dive into what Aloha Transport Assistance does for our Kupuna. So Beth and myself, technically, our healthcare background is physical therapist assistants for over 13 years each. And we've worked in a variety of settings, from skilled nursing to home health to acute hospital. So centered really around the senior population throughout our tenure. And we saw the need for this coming up on 5 years now. So it's been a little over 4 years. We've been medical escorts. And then I'll touch on this later, but we also a year ago added senior travel companion. But a little bit more about Aloha Transport Assistance and what we do. It is a bed-to-bed service. It's all exclusively on commercial planes and occasionally private jets. So inter-island, mainland, and international. Well, we help folks. We'll arrive at whatever location is, whether it be the hospital, a foster care home, a private residence, and we'll help that individual from that bed all the way through till we get to the other final destination, whether that be another facility or another residence to that bed there. So all the ground transportation, all the flight arrangements, they will have somebody with them the entire time. And we coordinate everything. And we actually prefer to coordinate everything in-house when it comes to flights, potentially wheelchair vans when needed, or taxi rides to and from the airport. The reason being, there's a few reasons, but basically it's easier for us to make changes if needed. If there's delays in flights, or if there's a delay in a provider, a vendor for the wheelchair vans, it's easier for us to make that switch if everything's in our names versus a client's name or their credit card or however you line it up, etc. And the other big part of it is we want to take a little bit of stress away from the family. They're usually in an emotionally charged, challenging situation, and by handling all logistics for them, it's one less decision they have to make during a really difficult time with their family member or loved one. And we customize all of our trips based on client needs. So we help people that have had strokes, heart attack, any type of heart issue, amputations, broken bones, that have dementia, Alzheimer's, psych issues. So a wide range of folks. Keep in mind, these folks, though, have been cleared from a medical facility or cleared by a doctor to fly. So these are non-emergency transport situations. And after they've been in the hospital potentially or skilled nursing for a little while, or they could be someone just wants to move. Like we've had situations where mom and dad still live here, kids are on the mainland, a situation changes due to a health concern, and now need help moving mom and dad off island. We've helped in those situations as well to go live with them. And we really value our time to be able to institute what we've learned over the years and translate into safe transportation for folks that just can't do it on their own. To give you some specific examples of people we've helped recently, we helped a family who, the family's on Kauai. Mom lived on Oahu. She lived in a second-story living situation. She had a full-time caregiver. She had dementia. She could not walk. It wasn't working out. We helped get her over to Kauai to a care center. They trialed that for about 6 to 8 weeks because they wanted to be closer to her. Unfortunately, that did not work out. And due to the lack of foster care available in Kauai, they had to come back to Oahu to find a foster care, and I helped them there as well. But they're just grateful that I got to take some of that stress and unknowns off of their plate for that one piece of all the hundred of decisions they have to make in caring for their mother. We've helped people to Molokai. That can be challenging. As you know, Mokulele is the only airline servicing the island. And two clients that stick out to me over the years is there's two hospice patients, and give me chills, sorry. Their last wish was to be home with their family. And we were able to provide that to get them home. That was kind of their dying wish, and to not pass alone in the hospital. And we're grateful to have the opportunity to be a part of that and to at least provide that last bond between their family and not be alone. We do go to the mainland, and from the mainland, we help people back to the mainland, all over the mainland, as well as internationally. Last year, I was in Osaka and gone as far as Lithuania with someone who could not stand up. So we help a variety of people to a variety of places. A big question that usually comes up is, okay, this sounds great. Sounds like a valuable service. Okay, what does it cost? What does that look like? What's the payer source? So the payer source breakdown first is 70-20-10. 70% is private pay. 20% is insurance. So we worked with Aloha Care, HMSA, United Healthcare, and some MedQuest folks. The 10% is usually a hospital foundation fund or a church group that someone may be affiliated with. And that usually wraps up the breakdown of who pays for what. And then we pride ourselves on transparent pricing. So what does that mean? When a client pays for a flight or they pay for a wheelchair van, they pay the amount that it actually costs. There is no markup on any of that. We do have a service fee, but it's not going to be reflected in what those costs are. We don't think that's fair. So what we do is, let me give you an example. So an inner island, let's say from Honolulu to the Big Island, pricing range is going to be from about $1,200 to $2,000 plus transportation costs. It depends on the person. So if we have a 120-pound person who requires, minimal assistance but cannot travel on their own, versus someone who's 240 pounds and has had a stroke and can't sit up and is wheelchair bound, they're going to be on different sides of that sliding scale. So it is customized to each client, and it depends on their need and time and distance. And then as far as the travel companion side, I'd like to touch on that for a second. We do help folks when they need to go to mainland or even outer island. They'd like to go to, let's say, a wedding or the birth of a new grandbaby or a high school graduation or whatever the family gathering may be. We do escort those folks. They tend to not need as much assistance. It's more just navigation and making sure they're safe along the way and no one takes advantage of them. And as well as we recently helped someone from Kahala Nui who their family would fly out, pick her up, fly back to Oakland, and then fly back with her, and then fly back again. And when they found out about us, the client who's 96, she's sharp as a tack and really sweet and funny. She uses her walker. She was excited because she felt like she was a burden to her family. And by us helping her, she felt like she was also helping her own family. And we would meet her at Kahala Nui. We escort to the airport all the way through security and make sure she gets on the plane safely. And then we let the family know that so-and-so is on their way. The plane is taken off. And then what we also do is we coordinate to make sure there's a wheelchair waiting for her if she so desires at the gate that will take her to baggage claim where her family will be. So that's kind of the wide gamut of what we do and how we help, our Kupuna. And with our background, especially focusing on safe transfers is a huge part of what we did in skilled nursing and home health. That's primarily what happens on all these trips is you have to do a lot of transfers. And that is what we focus on for safety. We do have RNs if needed. If someone, let's say, needs injections or they have an IV, we would have those folks go with that type of client. So the majority of our healthcare career has been with senior population, and we just feel fortunate that now we can continue to serve our Kupuna, combining our background with our travel experience, and provide this valuable service that we think is important. And the other big part of it is, I don't know if you've seen the numbers, but emergency air transport is very expensive. Between islands, it starts between $10,000 to $15,000 and goes up from there to the mainland. You're talking 60 to 80 to start. And it's not always necessary. If someone's been in a very bad motor vehicle accident or they've had a severe stroke and they have to get rushed to the only trauma level 1 we have in Queens, that's a totally different story. But for them to go back home, it just may not be, it's a waste of, we feel, funds for that to happen. But I do appreciate everyone's time. This is going to be a fairly quick presentation. If I could, I would like to screen share something. It's a little one pager on us. Let's see here. Let me know if you can't see it. Here. Can you all see that?
Yeah, we can see it, Jeff.
Okay. So if you have any questions, I'm open for questions, unless Greg is to interject.
Okay, no, certainly. If anyone has any, of course, I can't see them if they're zero. One sec. Can let's see. I'm trying to figure out if I can. I can't see the screen. I can't see people's
Want me to stop
faces.
sharing?
Okay. Yeah. Could you please?
Yep. Yep.
Okay. Anyone have any questions? Please raise your hands. Okay. I don't see any. I guess you were so comprehensive in your presentation, Jeff, that you've either convinced everyone or they're anxious to sign up with you. So thank you so much. Um, and I appreciate the time. I found it really interesting.
Thanks.
And I was going to ask if you covered all the islands and the mainland as well, and evidently you do. So that was going to be my question. Thank you again, Jeff. And yeah,
Thank you. I'd like to thank Carolyn too for the introduction to the Kupuna Caucus.
well, of course. You're welcome back anytime.
Aloha.
Aloha. Let's see. Next item on our agenda has to do with legislative deadlines. Just for your information, the deadline for us to introduce the 5 bills that'll be introduced as the Kupuna Caucus bills will be January 19th. I can tell you that they are being prepared as we speak and will be introduced in time to meet the deadline without any problem. Now, as all of you probably know, once the bills are introduced in the House and Senate, they'll be assigned a bill number, and then several weeks after that, they'll be referred to committees. So, once all of that happens, then we can begin in earnest contacting key legislators, as I know all of you will, to support the 5 bills that are top priority bills for our caucus. I'll say again, the deadline is January 19th for the Kupuna Caucus bills. The overall bill introduction deadline is a week after that. Any questions, comments? If not, the next and final item I have on the agenda is announcing that our next meeting will be February 2nd, first Friday in February. Anyone having any ideas for future Kupuna Caucus topics? Please let Charles know in Senator Moriwaki's office or me, and be happy to consider them for future meetings. With that, does anyone have any announcements that they would like to share with the group? Let's see.
I could quickly say that HPGS oh, I'm sorry, my hand isn't up. Alan, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Alan. Alan, you're muted, so
Here we go. Okay,
there
you
you
can hear me all? Okay. I'd like to see some closer review by the MedQuest division at DHS for the adult dental services that were supposedly reinstated back in 2022 by legislation that got a lot of support from the ledge. But my preliminary reviews of things indicate that it's going at best very slowly and not very effectively. The getting the word out to Medicaid beneficiaries is, as I see it, not happening very well. I expect that our next meeting to have, I got some preliminary responses from Judy Moore Peterson's, one of her staffers. I sent a set of questions, about 8 questions, and I got about 3 answers. But I have not had a chance yet to respond to them. I got the answers just last week. I just think that there's a lot more that needs to be done to deliver this service to Medicaid beneficiaries. I can tell you right offhand, one of the concerns I have is that MedQuest imposed an arbitrary cap on services of $3,500. And we're dealing in the Medicaid population with a lot of people who've lost a lot of teeth because largely through starting with lingual, people were not getting their teeth properly served, and there were a lot of extractions that occurred and a lot of emergency room visits, in a way that saved no money in the long run. And now we have a lot of people walking around with holes in their dentition because of that. And $3,500 to fix 10 years worth of lack of service is first of all unnecessary. And the legislature appropriated something in the high 20 some million or 30 low 30s. I forget the precise figure. Let's spend that money and
Thank you.
let's make sure that people are properly served.
Yeah, Alan. That's a truly
Thank you.
important issue. We'll share that with Chair Moriwaki and Chun for the next
Yeah,
meeting consideration. Thank
the
you.
chair is personally aware of it. I've been in
Okay.
lots of communication. Thank you very much, Greg, and Happy New Year
Thank
to
you. Any other announcements? Anyone else? If
Yeah,
not,
real quick.
I'm sorry, Rick. I see
Yeah.
you. Yep.
So
Go ahead.
HPGS, Hawaii Pacific Gerontological Society, our next meeting is on the 18th, January 18th, 11:30 till 12:30. It's a Zoom. It's open to the public. I'll send out a flyer once it's out, probably the end of next week. Well, our speaker is going to be Virginia Beck from PAR. You all know PAR, and you know how to run it quite well. She's going to present some new things, and one of the things, as Rep, you probably know, is the ability to also request a hearing this year, in addition to the testimonies that are given. She's going to tell us how to access the ability to do that. That comes up every year as an issue. So,
Sorry, PAR stands for Public Access Room, everyone.
oh, I'm sorry. Yes, PAR. Virginia. Anyway, sorry. You're welcome to join us if you like. Kathy and I are also going to talk about whatever bills we're aware of that are up at that point. That'll be the 18th, the day after the ledge opens. So there's all of that. Hey, I'm just gonna put again. I'm not promoting marijuana, but I've heard Steve Wall, prosecuting attorney, a couple of times present on this now. But I also dug a little bit deeper in the weeds here. So Colorado's made $3 billion off of taxes. Washington's made $2 billion off of taxes. One thing that did increase in Colorado, and I don't know if it's because it's a correlational. It doesn't link it to marijuana, but traffic issues became an issue. I know in Washington we also had more intoxication around all of that, but I'm not seeing all the warning signs that he presents when I Google. Everybody has their opinion on pot. I have mine as well.
Thank you, Rick.
But I'm just going to leave
Thank
it
you.
right there. Thanks.
Okay, we have Diane Tirada with her hand up, followed by Larry Smith. Diane, please go ahead.
Hi, I'm from Catholic Charities Hawaii, and I just want folks to know that we are going to be having a webinar on Friday, January 19th at 10 o'clock on mental wellness for dementia caregivers, self-care and healing from grief and stress. Our speaker will be Ms. Stisa Goss from the Mental Health America of Hawaii. We don't have the flyer quite ready. We got a little delayed because of the holidays, but it will be going out shortly. And as soon as it's available, I guess we'll send it out to Charles to distribute to the group.
Yes, we'll do that. Happy to do that. Thank you, Diane. Larry Smith? Larry?
Aloha. Took me a while to find the raised hand. I also lived in Washington State when pot was legalized. I didn't see the problems. I saw the revenue coming in that the state needs. I think somebody needs to fact check what Steve is saying. The Attorney General evidently has issued a long study and a plan to move Hawaii toward legalization of cannabis. And so maybe we need equal time if he is going to be out there on the trail attacking pot, that we need equal time from people to explain more of the facts as opposed to what he hears. So that's just what I'm saying. But it was not on the agenda. No one was able to prepare to comment on it. And it's too bad. We live in a situation where people sometimes say things that aren't based on fact. All I'm going to say right now, but we need some equal time on this particular.
Thank you, Larry. I suspect that this will be one of the topics in the 2024 legislative session that will be heavily debated. So this surely is just the start of ongoing discussions. Thank you very much. If there's no one else with any comments, wishing you all a happy new year and looking forward to a successful 2024. Aloha, everyone. Mahalo.
Bye. Happy New Year, everyone.